Okay, so this next video lecture is still the continuation of our Module 5 job order costing. So we will continue with the source documents for our job order costing. For materials, we have what we call materials requisition. So the cost of our direct materials is traced to each job. So this is through the use of our materials requisition form. When direct materials are issued to the production, the materials requisition form, this identifies the job, the quantity, and the type of direct materials and the cost of it, okay, in this source document. To assure that materials costs are properly allocated to jobs in process, the materials requisition form is usually completed as materials are taken from the raw materials inventory and added to our work in process, meaning each time there is a need, okay, for the use of direct materials. So when these items of inventory are taken from our stock room or warehouse, so materials requisition form is filled in with the specific or specified or necessary information related to the materials, like the type of materials taken, its cost especially, okay. So we have here an example of our materials requisition form. Okay, so it shows here the name of the entity. Okay, I think R-3096 is the number of, or this is the the specific number for this materials requisition form. This is used as a control, okay, this is like a serial number to control the use and the transfer of direct materials from the warehouse to the work in process or to production. So it also includes the date and the job number for these materials will be used, okay. Aside from that, it also shows the quantity, okay, the item number, the description, and its corresponding cost per unit, as well as its total cost. And most especially, it should also reflect the person who requested these materials, okay, and who received it and who costed it. So this is to make sure that there are segregation of duties with different employees who are handling and recording this transaction, okay, to avoid manipulation and fraud later on, and of course to determine who will be accountable if such manipulation or fraud may exist. Okay, so this is very important. This is part of the internal control of the entity. So this is an example of materials requisition form, which is used as a source document in recording the materials that are used in the job order costing. Okay, so aside from the materials requisition form, we also have another source document which pertains to our direct labor. So this is reflected in our job timesheet. So your job timesheet, or this is also known as ticket, this is the source document that is being used to assign direct labor cost to our jobs. When direct labor works on a job, the employee fills out a time ticket, okay, or the worker fills out a time ticket which indicates the time spent on working for the specific job along with their wage rate. So labor cost allocated to work in process inventory, this is based on the completion of time tickets, which identifies what job workers spent time on. Okay, so we have here an example of our time ticket. Okay, so in this time ticket, it reflects the name of the employee or the worker, their number, the job that they work on, the pay date, and the date as well as the starting time and the completion time for that specific day, okay, in working for the job. So after that, it can be determined, or the total hours spent for the job during the day can be determined, and it will be multiplied to the hourly rate to get the total cost. So we will just add all the cost for each day on which the employee worked for the specific job. Okay, so that's what we will pay the worker or the employee, and this is also used, okay, as a source of data for allocating direct labor for our job order costing. Okay, so this time ticket will be approved by the supervisor, and the cost or the computation should be done by the accounting department or cost accountant. Okay, so again, this is to make sure that there is segregation of duties between who authorizes or approves this time ticket and who computes and records this in the book of the entity's accounts. So again, this is part of their internal control. So this is our time ticket, which is a source document that is used in recording our direct labor for a specific job order. Okay? And for overhead or manufacturing overhead, so we have the overhead absorption rate, okay, to be used. So usually, overhead is assigned to jobs using a predetermined rate, meaning there is a basis in which we can use to allocate overhead or manufacturing overhead. We all know that manufacturing overhead includes indirect materials and labor. So it is difficult for us to assign, okay, how much, okay, should be charged for a specific product or job. So that's why, to make it simple, we will use a predetermined rate or overhead absorption rate. So if the rate is based on direct labor hours, okay, so meaning we can use the number of hours worked on the job, okay, in allocating our manufacturing overhead. Then, if that is the case, the predetermined rate and the information from the time tickets will be used to assign our overhead rate. So, factory overhead costs are allocated to jobs in process using a predetermined overhead rate as mentioned. So, how do we determine this predetermined overhead rate? This is by estimating during the budget process the total factory overhead cost, and we will divide this total cost by the direct labor hours, or you can also use the direct labor in terms of its value in money. Okay, so depending on what basis the management has intended to use in allocating this overhead. So to understand better, we have here an example. Okay, assume that a company is using the direct labor dollars for allocating their overhead. So it was estimated that their total overhead cost is 300,000, and the total direct labor in dollars is 250,000. So here, to determine the company's overhead rate for the purpose of allocating our overhead to jobs in process, this is equal to 120% of our direct labor dollars. So how to compute it? Our formula is total factory overhead cost divided by total direct labor cost, meaning this is getting the percentage of our total factory overhead over our total direct labor cost, which is our basis for determining the overhead rate. Okay, so we just take the data from the illustration and use the formula. So it will give us 120%. Okay. So if the direct labor cost is 20,000 for the month, therefore our overhead is equal to 24,000, or that is 120% of our direct labor in dollars. So that's how we determine the overhead rate and to calculate the overhead to be charged to our job. Okay, so factory overhead would be allocated to the individual jobs based on the portion of the 20,000 direct labor cost that is assigned to each job. If job number 45, for example, had 9,000 in their direct labor cost for the month, so their corresponding factory overhead will be 10,800. Again, this is 120% of the direct labor cost. And this will be the amount of overhead that we will allocate to the specific job. So we have here the summary, okay, of the source documents. Okay, by the way, in factory overhead, we can use the time ticket, okay, because in there we can see the number of hours, number of direct labor hours worked on the job, as well as the direct labor cost. So that can also be used as a source document for our factory overhead. So in summary, for the major source documents used in job order costing, so we have the type of cost. For direct materials, the source document is materials requisition form. So this source document authorizes materials to be taken from the storeroom for the use in the job. For direct labor, our source document is timesheet. So this is a form filled out by employees that reports how much they spent on each job, okay, to calculate for the labor cost. And for factory overhead, this is accountants working, or we can also base on the time sheet. Okay, so factory overhead costs are not allocated to each job based on actual cost. They are allocated based on estimated cost called a predetermined overhead rate. And the most common basis is our direct labor hours or direct labor cost. Okay, so those are for the major sources of documents that we use in job order costing. Okay, so we have here another example. Okay, so this is the combination of materials, direct labor, and factory overhead for our job order costing. So a furniture mart received an order to manufacture furniture for a school where the order was assigned a job code FS-6. So this job was priced at 400,000, and the selling and administrative cost allocated to the job was 10% of their selling price. So we have here the source documents, okay, materials requisition. So it reflects the date, the requisition number, and the corresponding cost for the direct materials used in producing this job order. We also have here the job time sheet, which reflects the number of hours and its corresponding cost for working on that job order. And our factory overhead cost is applied at 180 per direct labor hour. So the requirement here is for us to prepare a job order cost sheet for job FS-6. So this is how it would look like. Okay, so the job order cost sheet will have its description, okay, and the job order number, okay, the manufacturing cost, okay, like your direct materials. So direct materials, we get it from our materials requisition form. So that's 115,000. For direct direct labor, we get 50,000 from our job time ticket. So that's the total direct labor cost, okay, in working for this specific job order. For factory overhead, so our factory overhead is based on 180 per direct labor hour. So that is 180 times 1,000 direct labor hours. So that's 180,000. So we will total the cost of your direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead to get our total manufacturing cost of 345,000. And for our selling and administrative expenses, okay, so this is selling and administrative expenses is 10% of our selling price. So our price or selling price is 400,000. So 10% of that is equal to 40,000. So therefore, the total cost for this job is equal to 385,000. And we will deduct from the selling price of 400,000 the total cost of 385,000. So the result is a profit of 15,000. This is just an example, but we can have another format which specifically provides line item, just like in preparing the income statement, where the selling price or the revenue is placed on top, okay, and then we will deduct all of the corresponding cost which relates to it to get our profit or loss. And we can also have the heading, okay, in which the entity's name, the job order number, and the period or the month, okay, for this job refers to. But again, this is just an illustration. We can have our own format. So those are for our source documents that are being used in our job order costing, that is also used to prepare our job order cost sheet, as well as in recording these transactions in the books of the entity.